Hey, true believers. Chris Mack coming at you today with Batman Legends of the Dark Knight, number 39. Now, as you can see, this issue is really banged up, and this was the first copy of this book that I got. Thankfully, I've found another one since then, but I didn't want to take my good copy out, so I figured we'll just use the banged up copy, and I feel so sorry for it. But anyway, this is an interesting read, especially if you're kind of really into psychology and a lot of the teachings from Jung, which Stanley Kubrick used in a lot of his films. This really delves into the psychosis. And so this is part one. The series, or the arc, should I say, is called Mask. The print date on this was November 1992. And the people that made this book is Brian Talbot. The Gaspar is the letters. Ollie Optics is the colors. Goodwin and Kaplan were the editors. And see how a good writer, they'll say they can write anything. All it takes is research. And that's what Talbot did. It says right here, psychiatric consultant Keith Marsland. So I really appreciate that. And of course, Batman was created by Bill Finger with Bob Kane. And then we open the book, and you get this really cool kind of Dutch angle going on of Batman. And he's like, I am Batman. This is my city. At night, it belongs to me. And so you're sucked in immediately by this really cool artwork and, just Batman being the Dark Knight. And he's talking about how it's been a quiet night, but he sees these amateurs getting ready to break into this building. He's like, an experienced burglar would have had that door open by now. And so he's like, I'm going to put the fear of God into them. Or rather, the fear of the bat. I am going to enjoy this. And you actually see a little bit of a smile spread on his face, and you're just kind of like, interesting. And now, so he jumps down onto the street, and this guy, and if you look at the artwork, I like how it's very much noir, a lot of, what do you call it, bathed in shadows. And this guy's like, what's that noise? What noise, man? A sort of swish noise, kind of like when you swing a baseball bat. And he swings the flashlight around. I love how Batman is just standing there. And so we explode into some action, and you just see how Batman is able to use what he was taught when he went on his walkabout before he became Batman. He goes, my arm block shatters as Ulna. I am the Batman. In the shadows, I move like a shark through water, swiftly, effortlessly. And he goes, side thrust kick, the most powerful blow you can deliver. With surgical precision, I stopped short of snapping his spine. So you see how powerful and experienced he is in what he does. But then, after all this, you see him talking to the police officer that's supposed to pick up these burglars. And things start to go insane. He's like feeling weak, nauseous, everything's spinning. Mustn't let them see me like I think I'm going to be. And then I like this segue here because we go from the alley. He goes, a brief impression. I'm on a gurney, being wheeled down a corridor. The wheels sound like, and then we got all these little onomatopoeias, screet, screet, screet. And it jumps into when he was in the cave when he was a kid and saw those bats. And then just out of nowhere, we're immediately thrust into a hospital. Now, for those of you that have read more modern books and haven't really read a lot of the older stuff, look at the artwork here by Talbot, and then go back and look at, what is that series called? It's Scott Snyder and Greg Capullo's Last Night on Earth. And there's a scene where Batman's in a hospital, and the artwork very much harkens back to this book, in my opinion. And so he's talking about how he feels drowsy, sick. He's like, I try to speak. It's a monumental effort. And so we get these panels, and I like how they're clean from, juxtaposed, but I haven't had enough coffee today, from what we just saw. So we get that noir, gritty feeling to this kind of surgical, how a hospital's supposed to feel. And we get this doctor, he's like, well, here you are again. Tedious, isn't it? Oh, shut up. It's bad enough wasting hospital time treating bums like you without having to endure your banal conversation. So, and he's like, just keep quiet, Mr. Wayne. And you're like, wait a minute, what? And so Bruce obviously wants to escape because he's like, they know my identity. Which one of my which one of my nemesis did this to me? But he's like, I make it to the door. A stranger stares back at me. A reflection wired in glass. I'm an expert on disguise, makeup. I'd smell it. I'd feel it. This is me. So you're just like, wait, what's going on? And then we get this caseworker who's like, call me Mike. And you at first really think that he's there to help you the way he talks to you, but then things just kind of start to, you start to feel like cracks in the armor, if you will. Because he starts to explain Bruce's condition, and he goes, oh, sorry, big words. And in between this, we go back to, from the stark cleanliness back to this just horrific moment. So we're back in Bruce's mind, and the death of his parents haunts him. And now you'd think with a lot of more modern books now, they always have a lot of action to keep the audience engaged. This, as you can see, you would think, oh God, it's just panels, people talking. But it's interesting because Bruce starts to question himself on it. Is he really Batman, or is he really insane, pun intended? And so he's like, Bruce, look, I know that there's an intelligent man in there somewhere. Now, while you're in a state of lucidity, I'd like to explain just what's wrong with you. It might help to start you thinking, help you start putting things in perspective, help you slowly rationalize your situation. Now see how things kind of, look at the background, how it starts to kind of darken. He goes, simply put, you disassociate yourself from your other personalities. This is often characterized by amnesia or altered state of consciousness. You flee into this Batman identity in your attempt to control your world. The real world makes no sense to you. It killed your parents and screwed you into the ground. And look at how we get closer in the panels. You see the world as meaningless chaos. You feel that you need to impose order. It's a fundamentally fascist impulse that many people share. When you put on the mask, a different personality takes over. Powerful, dominant, able to cope with things. So see how we can kind of start to see that Mike's not exactly the person we think he is. And then this kind of harkens back to the beginning when Batman's talking about how, he's the Bat, this is his city, and how he's able to dominate those thugs in a heartbeat. And before we can get any more into that, Mike leaves. And then Bruce actually sees Catwoman. And you see Selina go, self-pity is it now? And he's like, Catwoman, you have to help me. And you see in his mind, she goes, you see, I don't exist. I'm only a projection of your mind, your sexual fantasy, your dream lover, a fetish in leather. But you're pathetic. I'm a fantasy that demands a man with real power. And so Bruce is starting to think that it's a dream. And you see Catwoman crying, and he's like, she seems worried, sad. But when he's like, she's gone, he notices, he's like, I taste salt. So you notice something's happening. We get more with Mike, and we get a whole lot of talk here about Jung and masks. It's really an interesting read. I know a lot of people are like, oh, this is so boring, where's the action? Sometimes action just comes from suspense and drama, and that's what this book does, because it makes you start to question the Dark Knight as well. Now there's a, Mike puts on a radio form, and they go, that was the Die Fledermaus. And if I'm not mistaken, Die Fledermaus means the bat in German. And then we go on to Mozart's Requiem Mass. And he's like, no, wrong channel. The Requiem, I can't bear to hear it. The last time I heard it was at their funeral. I wanted to rip the lids off their coffins, and he's just talking about how it's pure, tortured, and you're like, what is going on? So we start to see the use of how Batman talked at the beginning as a pain. Use it. Redirect energy. Channel the will. And so we start to see something happen that makes him suit up. And you're like, yeah, the Batman's going to find out what's going on. But then we see a terrified Bruce Wayne. We see a stitched up mask. And he goes, my confidence collapses. So yeah, guys, Mask as it's called. This is a very heavy psychological book. So when you read it, make sure to take your time and appreciate the panels and how they use to tip off little hints. And of course, that's what artwork's supposed to do. It's supposed to drive the narrative. And the art team, along with Talbot here, does a wonderful job of doing that. This is very much, in my opinion, an underrated book. This one in and of itself. We'll eventually go over part 2, but I really wanted to share this one with you guys because I really enjoy this read. Every time I get a chance to pick up this book, I always read it because the story's awesome, the artwork's phenomenal. So if you have enjoyed this, please and first and foremost, support your local comic shop and see if they have a copy of this, which I don't see why they wouldn't. Make sure to get 39 and 40 because it's a 2-parter. And if you've enjoyed this review, we really would appreciate if you take a moment to hit like, share, and subscribe. Helps the club channel more than you could possibly know. And if you wouldn't mind hitting that fancy little bat bell next to subscribe, that way as we continue to upload content, you guys can come to the channel. And we love to hear your feedback and talk with y'all down in the comments below or on our social media pages, which I'll make sure to leave the links down in the description. So with all that said, I hope y'all continue to have an absolutely amazing day reading, and happy hunting, true believers.